Hello and welcome to an episode of Casual Friday. I'm here with the Duck. As always, the show is brought to you by Woo. Links available in the description below. There are some exciting product features which we'll be showcasing in the coming days and weeks, so keep an eye out for those. But otherwise, it's always a good time to try the exchange, and it's the most straightforward way to support the show. If you want to sign up, there is a link in the description. Alternatively, you can just like these videos, subscribe to the channel, leave us a comment. All of that type of algo stuff helps as well. Don, I want to start with the monthly time frame because the next time we have this show, we will have had the monthly close. And I'm wondering if even you can find a way to FUD the monthly close that we're possibly going to have. What are your impressions of this time frame? It looks like last month was the highest monthly close we've ever had. This month, surprisingly, somewhat, is an inside month. So we neither breached the low nor the high of the previous month thus far. Does this give you pause? Is it bullish? Is it bearish? Is it one of those, it should have broken out a lot further? Is it a consolidation? What is it?
I mean, it technically closed above the highest high we've had and then just disappeared the next month, which is the bearish argument. The bullish argument is that the wick doesn't really matter. And as long as we close above like 60K, it's all good. And I think that's a little bit more convincing. So yeah, I think on the monthly time frame, there's basically, you can make both cases, but the bullish case is obviously more convincing just based on the trend and based on support resistance. So I think as long as 60K holds, it just kind of makes sense to be high time frame bullish. It's just, if it breaks, are you willing to sit in that position while it goes towards 45, or are you not? And it depends on the person, but I think generally this is bullish. And even if it pulls back, and even if it breaks 60K, the lowest I can see it go on the monthly time frame is that 45K consolidation and then make new highs. So generally, high time frame wise, I'm still bullish, and even if it goes down quite a bit, I'm still bullish.
Wow. Who are you? No, I'm joking. That's fairly consistent with what you said before, despite your fudding of the daily range low, which I'm sure we'll get to. But the argument is essentially, if 60K holds, you have nothing to worry about, right? And even if it doesn't hold, you'll get a monster trade for cheaper, and then you'd expect that trade to make new highs. Is that correct?
Yeah. I think 45K would be a killer trade.
Okay. Remember when you were team 30K? Do you think that's too far away? I mean, this is a discussion we had in previous episodes, right? That the further we push away from 30, the better, because we sort of get the luxury of new higher up support levels. I'm guessing that's why 45 is more of a inflection point line in the sand than the good old 30 level, just because of how far we traveled.
And the 30K level was a weekly support, and that was always going to become uninteresting the further away we moved, right? Because that 30K level actually doesn't really... I mean, it does exist if you really squint really hard, but I don't think it's too relevant on the monthly time frame. So I think just by us pushing quite far away from 30K, we have a little bit more of a floor that is a little bit higher up. And the higher it goes, the higher that floor will go. And something people really don't understand, right? And something you've seen with a lot of popular crypto people, where they have a price target in mind and they never raise it no matter what price action does, right? But if something runs from 1K to 10K, and you were like, oh, it's gonna go to 500, there's a good chance that if it went to 10K after 1K, you're never gonna get 500. If anything, you're gonna get 5K or something like that. And I think this is a mistake a lot of people make that are inherently interested in the space, and then they just get stuck in a bias and stuck to a price level specifically. They're like, I could have bought at this price level. I didn't. Now it's higher, but it has to reach my support or whatever. But the market never has to do anything for you, right? The market is there to take your money, and you have to, if you let it, it will fuck you over. And I think that's one of the easiest ways to get yourself fucked over, just being stubborn about the price level.
Yeah, I think that stubbornness you pointed it out, comes from this sort of anchoring effect from when you used to trade BTC, or some people attach oh, I had this much BTC at this price, and if I held it up until now, it would have been this much. Or just even the levels that you traded most actively and where you spent most market cycles. You sort of grow to become familiar with a certain BTC price that feels comfortable and natural, normal, and sane to you. But that's just a cognitive bias, right? It doesn't necessarily have any bearing on reality. So even if you and I have seen 3K BTC and 70K BTC, it doesn't mean that 3K BTC is as likely as it was in 2020, for example.
Yeah, I mean, that's just completely out there now, right? Like 3K, I don't think we're ever going to get again. And we're not going to get 7K ever again either, unless this entire space goes to zero, which is why this is such a dumb way to think, right? Like if we go now below 16K, this is because the entire space is basically going to zero. In my opinion, like you're never going to get below 16K without also just going below 10 and also going below 5, just because it would have like something so horrendously bad would have to happen to make that happen, that it would just drive price further and further down. And I just don't believe in that. So it just doesn't make much sense.
Listen, bro, it's just the whales engineering liquidity, as I've learned from reading Twitter. So don't worry your pretty little head about it.
Yeah. I mean, people are like, oh yeah, the ETF, once the ETF people start dumping and really like fuck us over, and we're finally gonna go below 20. And I'm like, guys, you just completely lost it.
I mean, liquidate Sailor, right? That's also
a
classic.
I think if anything, he's gonna get liquidated by sideways, like by lengthy sideways, where like at some point he couldn't really meet the requirements that he has anymore. But I think it's very, very unlikely. Like the whole liquidate Sailor movement, every time that got loud, there was a local bottom.
Classic, yeah. It's like, who else is left? You know, the lower you go. It's fine. BTC monthly time frame makes sense. Also, it just seems like as important as 59, 60K is on the monthly, it seems like all time frames converge around 60K in one way or another, with how vol has been getting crushed. You know, if you're a monthly trader, weekly trader, daily, intraday, etc., I mean, 60K is kind of the range low, irrespective of which time frame specifically you're trading on. So I think that's one of those nice areas where ordinarily you might want to wait for a higher time frame close or whatever to start building a position, or to add to a position if you've started more aggressively. But in this case, I think you can rationally justify being a bit more aggressive around 60K based on lower time frame price action, as opposed to waiting for the higher time frames necessarily, just because I think those signals have more weight when all the time frames are sort of coalesced around one area. So that's the monthly, and I think 45 is it's the nearest monthly support we have. I don't think it needs to be more complicated than that, right? Nice little consolidation cluster. We talked about it on the way up. Like, it's self-evident, I think.
Yeah, if something goes wrong, basically that's the level where you're like, okay, if something went wrong, and here I'm getting such a massive discount. Anyone that's selling to me is an idiot. And I think that would be 45. I don't know if we're going to get it. I think it's hilariously discounted at that point. So it's just the nearest monthly support. And just because, like, below the one that we already have, which is 60K. And I think just because you have a support doesn't mean it has to be hit, right? So that is one. It's also very important, because people are like, oh, there's a really good support at this and that level, so let me just only do business there. But the problem is that, like, oftentimes if the market is strong, you actually don't even hit those support levels.
Yeah, I think that's completely fair, especially if you're taking guidance from very high time frames. I think you need to account mentally for wicks at those levels if they do get hit. So let's say you do get 45, there's no reason why that can't poke below, for example, and then close above 45 on a higher time frame basis. Or even if we take a more if we take a more conservative weekly level, the tiny mini cluster thing at like 51, 52, it's the same thing there, right? Like, if that's the level itself, then you can trade it just outright. But a lot of the time, especially if it's low volatility into high volatility driven, you should be aware that there may be wicks that come with it as a result. And then you can look at the candle closes to really get a sense of whether it's holding. But some of those best trades are sort of at high time frame support. You're buying almost below the support, right? Or even explicitly below the support, because your argument is, if I'm right, this is the wick, and it's the best entry I'm going to get. And it works on the upside as well when it comes to resistance levels, But I would argue,
my favorite trading,
although I would say that it's, in terms of balancing those two, I will generally look to be a bit greedier on the entry side, sort of try to get the wicks below or as close to the level as I can. But when it comes to getting out of trades, I'm like, anything that looks like resistance, if I'm long, or vice versa, if I'm short, like, I'm not going to be waiting for the extra 1, 2, 3% wick to get the fuck out of a trade. But to get in, I think that greed sort of makes more sense. Do you agree, or do you employ the same approach on both sides?
No, I 100% agree. Salsa Tequila says it best, where he says like lucky entries, likely exits.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty much describes it really well. Like you want to have an entry where you're like, holy shit, how did I get that? And you want to have the exits where you're like, oh, I mean,
good enough, fuck off, let me go.
Exactly. Because if you're looking for lucky entry, lucky exits, I mean, then you have to be really fucking
that's
lucky.
A lot of luck, yeah. I think that's very fair. So we've done the monthly time frame. The weekly time frame is quite curious, I think. It's still one of the ones I'm watching most closely. First of all, just on a purely, really, I guess, base level analysis, we're starting to get consecutive red weeks now. And as silly as that sounds, granted, they haven't been very impactful, right? We've kind of just been stuck around 60-ish, and it's not the end of the world. But it's been really a long time since we've had consecutive down weeks, just in an absolute sense. The last two that we had before this were in that same 40k range, and that was around the ETF news. And those didn't even manage to break market structure or make a sort of lower low close whatsoever. So now that we've had 3, potentially 4 red weeks in a row, that's at least slightly different to the price action we had in the past, right? Not to be too obvious or to make too fine a point of it. The other thing that I find interesting on the weekly time frame is I'm still giving some weight to that mini cluster that we created before the highest weekly close, where the underside level is 67.2 and the top side level is 69k. I know that's close to price, and we didn't really push that far away or anything of that type of nature. But I just think in this type of empty air type of area where we're so close to all-time highs and there's an absence of historical levels to sort of ground your TA, I'll give more weight to local stuff like this, even if I wouldn't ordinarily kind of consider it as much as I am now. So I don't know if you think of that weekly cluster as relevant at all. I know you had some stuff to the left when we spoke about it, but just from my point of view, we had a very subtle shift in market structure in the form of a lower low close, which we haven't had in a while, and that's at least now still providing some resistance. So that's at least my main focus on the weekly time frame. Because support wise, realistically, if shit breaks down, I think conservatively, somewhere in the mid like 52-ish or something on the weekly, if you're going to be using higher time frame hints. That's at least not completely hot air. And then if it gets really hilariously discounted, then the pre-ETF range in the 40s monthly support. But that's at least what my weekly charts look like. What's this time frame whispering to you?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much the same thing. Like high time frames are bullish, like we talked about. The monthly is really good. The weekly time frame is a little bit less so, in my opinion. Like making the new high and then closing below, and then starting to kind of like have this little bleed out of sorts. It's not hilariously bearish, just based on. I mean, you just need to look at the thing. It's just been up only, and like a little bit of a pullback doesn't really hurt this thing too much. But at least it's quite obvious that the regime of, okay, it's up only and every single dip is immediately bought, has shifted towards it's taking a little bit longer to be like to have the dip bought. It doesn't have to mean that the dip isn't gonna be aggressively bought. It just means that we have a little bit more weakness now than we've had before. And a lot of people have been like, oh yeah, we've like all-time high breakouts, usually you get a little bit of like fuckery around it, but it's usually not this long, right? Like if you zoom out and you check what we did after or around the 20k breakout, that was like 2-3 weeks, and it was still pushing up, and then it just went. Here in this case, we actually got the breakout and then we failed it and fell back. So I would say it's quite a little bit like it's quite different how it's been trading, and I would classify this as a little bit of weakness, and that weakness I think would not be there anymore if we manage to close above like 69k, which is the high that we made before we had the highest weekly close. If we manage to get back above there, I think you can argue that 85k is next, and I think that would be very likely. Until then, I think it makes sense to be a little bit more cautious. Doesn't have to mean you have to be bearish, because the trend's strong and everything's just kind of like been up only. So fading that is quite early, I think, but it, in my opinion, should mean that risk is a little bit off. And we've seen that largely in most of the altcoins besides meme coins, right? Like people have been risking off a little just because they're worried that maybe this is gonna lead to an intermediate top. And I think that's basically coming from the weekly time frame looking like it does, where people start getting nervous. I think even if this pulls back to the level that you talked about, 52K, it would look incredibly strong. That's a tiny pullback in the grand scheme of things. So like the high time frames, and even I would classify the weekly as a high time frame as well, still looks really good, right? And there's a lot of room for this to go down and still look really good. I think even if this pulled back all the way towards where the ETF was launched, it would still look stupidly good overall. But I think that's very unlikely in comparison to the 52K support, which I could see get wicked into if the market continues to be weak.
Yeah, I think the levels are pretty clear at this point, right?
Yeah.
Sort of 60K multi-time frame floor, 69K is the breakout trade, all-time high continuation level. High time frame, like this first support, if 60K breaks down, is sort of 51, 52. And then the what the fuck, why am I getting these prices, is the ETF range in the 40s. Yeah. And anything below that, we just kind of don't talk about because, something has gone terribly wrong at that point. Yeah, the real halving.
It's also very, very unlikely that we go below that, I think. So
there you go. I think I had another... Oh, yeah, one thing I want to mention as far as... You pointed out the distinction between being risk-off versus shorting, etc. There's a subtle cost that comes with entering a short, sort of counter-trend short position, which is to say that even if you nail it, if you're too busy managing that short trade and sort of deploying your cognitive bandwidth in that direction, then you can miss out on the actual long/reversal/trend continuation trade, which on average will pay you better, or at least it mathematically has more upside, right? I'm sure you've been in that position before where you're like, oh, well, I think this thing is bullish, but in the short term it looks a bit shitty. And so you get into a short trade and then you spend all your time, effort, concentration on managing that short trade, and then by the time you close it, you're like, oh, okay, we've hit support, thank fuck, time to step away, take a break or whatever. And then the long side of the other side of that trade, which is the long, ends up being much easier and pays more, and that should have been your focus in the first place. Sometimes it happens all the fucking time. So sometimes, even if you're bearish, it's not worth shorting, which sounds like an absurd statement to make, but I really believe it, and it works the other way around too, depending on the context and the setup, etc. But the trade management doesn't come free from a resource perspective. So it's just worth being aware that you don't want to miss the forest for the trees. That if you manage to catch a short and stuff actually breaks down, that's great. But I think the long trade, if that happens, at least probabilistically, will pay better and kind of deserves more resources as a result.
Yeah, I think if you generally expect new highs, shorting is ill-advised for pretty much that reason. And there's actually a few reasons why it's a little bit of a stupid thing to do. One is you're just generally expecting price to go higher. So if you're right and you're just wrong about the timing and everything, right? Maybe you just short and it just goes up, and then you just completely offside, and your idea was right? Oh yeah, this market is gonna go up. You were just like, oh, maybe a little bit of a pullback. So that's quite stupid in itself, right? When you expect 80, 90, 100K to be hit and you start shorting, you're basically counter trading your larger idea. And if the market is more bullish than you thought, you're gonna be wrong, even though, you know what I mean? Like if the market is better, like even better than you think it is, yes, you're gonna be wrong and you're gonna lose money even though you had the completely right idea. And that's just completely dumb, like when you think about
it's painful
it on face
too.
value. Yeah, and then you're not gonna get into your trade. I've seen a lot of people do this actually, where they're like, oh yeah, this is the cycle bottom or like very close to it, but just one more push. And that one more push is usually what costs people. That's one reason. And like you said, the other one, in my opinion, is pretty much exactly what you described. When you are in a position and then you have to, it takes energy out of you. You have to manage it. And at some point, like you're just over it and you're like, okay, let me just chill now. And then you close it. Even if you hit it perfectly, once the market starts running, you're kind of like, you're not really in the headspace to take advantage of it. So like two big reasons why, if you think that the market generally goes higher, you should stay away from the short button, I think. Unless you have like a really good system that kind of obviously covers all of that and you have a lot of experience, but just generally, I think it's ill-advised. It's going to put you into a bad position. And the worst part, I think, about it is that if you're right, but the market is even better than you thought, you're still going to be wrong and you're going to miss out on all of that. Like, that's just a shitty way to go. And a lot of people go down the liquidation hole at that point. Like, imagine getting liquidated even though you're bullish because you're shorting like the last push lower. Like, that's just fucking dumb.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, that's a tough one to get over, I think, psychologically, and you'll just sideline yourself at that point, I think, realistically. That, if you have this directional bias and you fuck it up or the timing's wrong, etc., and then what you originally planned starts playing out in front of you, that sort of, oh my god, what the fuck was I doing picking up pennies in front of a steamroller feeling is really bad. Like, I'm speaking from experience here. It's not good at all. So I think that's very well said. And in general, I think Twitter loves to sell this fantasy of, well, then you just flip long, then you flip short, then you flip long, then you flip short, and you take like 50 trades at the top and the bottom, and then you hedge this and that. It's like, realistically, no one fucking trades like that, or very few people do. Certainly not the discretionary trader types that most people end up following on Twitter. Like, at a certain point, you have to come up with a dominant thesis and the trade that you think is really worth it, as opposed to trying to manage 50 trades in both directions at the same time. Like, especially if we're dealing with high time frame inflection points, the whole point is they're higher probability, but they come up less frequently, right? Yeah. So like, it's a reasonably scarce opportunity compared to day trading type of stuff. So you really want to bet on the right setup when it comes to those, and not be distracted, because you don't get to trade high time frame breakdowns, volatility expansions, those types of setups particularly frequently. So if you're focused in the wrong place, that ends up being very expensive. And again, I'm speaking from experience here. Like, I know this doesn't really apply to you as much, but nothing really stings as much as missing a really good monthly setup, or even fucking it up or mismanaging it and so on and so forth, and then just watching it play out. Because you feel like a complete idiot. You're like, how often do I get to trade monthly timeframes? Not very. What the audacity to like overmanage that trade and fuck it up, and then you watch it go what should have been your way for literally months, and you're like, oh my god, like, okay, this is a very good reminder as to why I trade these timeframes in the first place. But also, it requires a discipline in its own unique way when you're trading like really high timeframe setups. And I consider the weekly as well, just sort of a window of execution, and then weeks to potentially months of doing nothing, and the market doing the heavy lifting for you. That's a different type of discipline, but I don't think it's any easier,
Yeah, I've gone through it plenty of times. Most of the time, I actually take the trade the right way, and then I just close it early, and I'm like, why? It's just why? But it's just how it is. But this is us talking about experiences we have made. It's not just random rambling.
Yes. And they won't mean anything until you make these mistakes yourselves.
Oh yeah, it doesn't really help. but at least you're gonna be able to think back and be like, fuck
those guys.
They told me. But yeah, it's just how it is. Maybe you'll be able to recognize it earlier because
spot it in real time. Like, you take a monthly swing trade and you're like, oh, it's an hourly failed breakout. Just like step away from the monitor. I think it's a pretty good overview of the weekly time frame. Don, it's time for your favorite time frame. It is the daily. So vol has been getting crushed, as we discussed on Altcoin Thursday. Thank you for all the comments, feedback. We're going to keep that show going as we revamp the newsletter. So vol has been pretty low on the majors and kind of bleeding out. This bounce is kind of retraced halfway, roughly, just from eyeballing it. And that bounce was a product of the range low, which is your favorite adamantium support level in this entire market. The amount of faith you have in this level, every time we hit it, you're like, listen, just close your eyes and buy. It's getting stronger with each touch. I make a ton of money. I send you 20%, and I say thank you very much. We're not that far from it again. So presumably the bounce is going to be even stronger this time.
Oh yeah, that's how it works, right? Like when you drop a ball on the ground, like every time it bounces from the ground, it just flies a little bit higher. Yeah. It's just generally how physics
Study
work.
Newtonian physics, Remilio.
No, I mean, obviously, like it less and less, the more often it gets hit. But it has been quite strong, and it's actually a little bit surprising how strong it has been. And I generally think the longer we spend above 60K, the better for bulls, because we're basically digesting a move from 16K to 60K. So the longer we're able to hang onto these prices, the better. But yeah, I don't trust the range low much. I think it's not the best to take trades from, like, or base trades around, just based on the fact that if it fails, it's going to fail spectacularly. And the bounces so far have also really not been too inspiring. But also, like, the bears have not really been doing their job either. So it's kind of like it's hanging out. It's hanging out at support, but I think the more often it touches it, the more likely that support is going to fail. And if that's not going to be the case, right, and the bulls can hold this support, like you said, a dimension support, whatever, and it's never going to break, I think you're going to see that by price just crossing 68K ish. 65 would be a good first step, like the support level, support resistance level that we just broke and then just went back below again, like 65.3.
Yeah, from that lowest close-ish, right?
Yeah,
April,
yeah,
whatever. Yeah,
exactly. If we get back above there, that'd be a good first sign, I think, for bulls, just based on the fact that a false breakout like we had, number two, I wouldn't trust that much either.
I didn't trust my number twos either, Don.
Yeah, like it's just fuck off. We're in the situation where you kind of have to distrust all of the levels on the chart, and but if we close back above 65.3, I think that's a really good first step. Close back above 68, and I think there's a good chance it just keeps on running. But until any of those happen, I'm going to assume that the support is going to at least temporarily fail, right? Like, it could fail, and then we go from 60 to 58, and then we massively bounce, and that's just it, and that's all we get possible. But I think just generally, I would expect it to fail, wash out a little bit, and then go. But we'll see. Like I said, the bulls have been holding better than expected, and the bears have been doing less. But still, like, with every single test, you just have to trust the support less and less and less.
I mean, that even rhymes, so it has to be true, right? That's a good
Yes.
heuristic tool. Also, in the last time we were at the range low, you made the argument that closing above that 65.3 level would be a good signal. So I went all in market long on that big old green candle that went through it, and that was the Pico top. So are you going to apologize / refund our audience, or how does this work?
No, I actually, like, I said that. And then I tweeted that 65 doesn't really matter and 68 all along. And I dare you to check on my Twitter. I actually said it live while it was breaking out. It's just how it is. No, I mean, the market just turned really choppy. And when the market goes really choppy, there's a good chance that it just kind of breaks the nearest support or resistance level without doing anything. And with vol being like just in general, like volatility just being crushed and like nothing's really happening, I was just of the opinion that the nearest support / resistance level was not going to do too much, and that proved to be right for now. We'll see if it continues to be right or not. But yeah, until we basically break 68 or 60, I think there's going to be a bunch of chop somewhere, and it's not going to be too pretty.
How depressing. From a trading point of view, I mean, you're not into breakdown shorting, obviously, because Germany and reasons.
Yeah, I think it's better to like long the breakout, like to the downside. I think that'd be more interesting on this one. As in, like, I think if 60K breaks, it's gonna be quick, and then like 2 or 3 or 4 days later, you want to probably long anyway.
Okay, yeah. I was gonna say what you mean by long the breakdown. I was like, but the sort of consequence of the breakdown, if you will.
Yes. Yeah. Depending on how it goes, obviously. Like, if you get relentless selling, then you might want to reconsider. But just generally, I think if it broke down, I think that's an interesting buy. I think it'd be nicer for the bulls if this broke down, just because you can just kind of like long it and then just write that up, and rather than like if it just chops upwards now, because that's harder to get on board with.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Could you be baited in by a failed breakdown type of thing? So now we've got, so many wicks in general around 60K. We come in and poke, I don't know what price would get there, but like sub 59k type of thing, and then let's say it doesn't go anywhere, and then starts trading back above 60 after that, depending on the liquidations and all this type of stuff. Is that enough as well? Or does it have to really break down and hit like a support to get you interested?
No, I think if it's just a tiny bit below 59, that'd be not enough, just based on the fact that we've done this so many times. But generally, yeah, I think also if it goes back above 68, I think that'd be an interesting play.
That's just a breakout trade at that point, right?
Yeah, like you either breakout traded above 68, like that's interesting to me, or you kind of like look for like 55 to 52-ish.
There you go. You heard it here first. And as you start fudding the level, the daily's being rescued, Don, at the speed of light. Have you ever seen a 1 minute breakout like this in your entire pathetic life? I didn't think so.
Oh, that was a little bit strongly worded. Where did that come from?
Even the 5 minute, I mean, this is a huge breakout.
Oh, that's a huge breakout.
And you just keep fudding it. It's unreal. Yeah, nothing will change your mind. This is just fake centrism from you, Don.
No. I just hate the support level of a passion. And it needs to go die.
We need to hit the reset button on the support level.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about ETH BTC. Can we just not?
We cannot. Yeah, we can just skip it.
Great. One thing I want to ask is contextually, and Salsa, whom you mentioned earlier, was speaking about this. We had some headlines that should have, I don't know, maybe uncrushed Vol a little bit, or that would have been nice at the very least from a trading point of view. Like the whole MetaMask thing and insiders saying that the ETH ETF isn't going to get approved, and SEC getting sued by consensus. That
no one gives a fuck about
stuff. It's like no one cares. There's no market impact there. Even some of the ETF flow news hasn't had that much market impact with first time outflows, stuff like that. And US hours have become significantly less sexy. You remember back in the day, and by back in the day I mean like a month ago, as soon as it was a US session, everyone's on their Arkham, whatever type of Nansen wallet, pocket watching app, watching Barry move BTC over to Coinbase, and people just really sort of centered on trading the US hours. Even the effect of that has kind of petered out a little bit. So the vol crush is real, but are you surprised by the lack of market impact by this news? And if so, what do you think of Salsa's argument, which was that, hey, this is actually bad news, like the things that I went over, especially the ETH SEC related stuff, but the fact that we haven't gone down is a sign of strength? Because this is something we sort of speak about on the show a lot, right? Like looking at gauging the market strength, having a litmus test by virtue of seeing the market's reaction to news. Do you think these recent headlines give that sort of insight, or is there something else going on?
I mean, technically everyone was kind of expecting this anyway, right? Like the SEC's been trying to kind of like make sure that the ETH doesn't get an ETF, so they were gonna go after someone or something. So I think that was kind of expected, and I think just generally priced in already. Like it's not necessarily a headline that is shocking to, I think, anyone really. So I don't really think the impact is like you can really gauge anything from the impact just based on the fact that it was like clearly coming anyway, but I could be wrong on that front. But to me, like it's not enough to be like, oh yeah, this such bad news, we should have gone down, but we didn't. Because I think like one, it's not that bad news. Like what is this gonna change? Really, like everyone expected the ETF to, like the ETH ETF to come later, if anything anyway. And the SEC is kind of like throwing the last punches before they go down. Like that's kind of how it seems like they're going after like as much as they can, delay as much as they can, but it seems like it more like a delay tactic rather than actually trying to win any of this. So I don't really think it's bad news, and that's why the market is just like not really giving a shit, because it's just expected / like not that interesting. And it's ETH on top of all of things, which has been very, very like ETH has just had like there hasn't really been too much eyes on ETH, right? Like it's been the most boring coin this entire cycle. Like literally, I think the most boring coin. It's been underperforming Bitcoin, but not by enough to be interesting, right? But it's been other altcoins have gone up and down much more. ETH has just been so fucking boring. So I don't think it's necessarily one of those moments where you can kind of just gauge the strength of the market, because I think the market just really doesn't give a shit about this news. And like whether that would have been more bearish leaning or bullish leaning, I don't think would have changed anything.
So your news is not news, is the
Yeah,
response essentially.
I legit think it's just a nothing burger, and everyone expected it anyway.
Fine, pretty fair, pretty reasonable. On the ETH front, I'd be surprised if anything radically changed since we spoke about it yesterday. The good old memes of 2K, 3K, 4K still seem to be in action. I did want to ask, do you think there's anything on the on the ETH monthly chart, now that we're coming up to the close, is that time frame salvageable at all, or is it a bit of a not your favorite?
It's, I mean, there's 2.7 ish, but
2.7.
yeah.
You say that very reluctantly from the sounds of
things. I don't like the monthly. I think it's a little bit shit.
Yeah, it's pulling teeth, isn't it? Looking at
yeah.
And it just hasn't been very useful either. Apart from the actual bottom.
The bottom was great. And the bottom, I mean, I actually made money on this too, which is great. Like, it's always great to be like, oh, this is great chart-wise, and then I actually made money on it too.
I wonder what that feels like.
Because I had like a support level between like 850 and 1100.
You had a fat box on this motherfucker, didn't you?
Yeah, and I bought the first test and I sold into like pretty much the high. And
you didn't hold until now. You're such a low conviction.
No,
honestly, it makes me sick.
The best part about it is that I sold, like, ETH outperformed on that move to the upside, and then I sold and I bought Bitcoin instead, and then Bitcoin outperformed massively on its leg.
Yeah,
so,
and then the mayor gave you the keys to the city, and you had an orgy with like
no.
Okay, right.
And then I sold that position early, and everyone hates me now because of it.
Did I make that meme earlier that like buying Don's exits at a certain point will make you more money than buying his entries, type of thing?
Oh, I mean, you're gonna make more money if you buy my entries, but you just shouldn't copy my exits.
That's well said. Yeah. It's like when Don says to exit, just move your stops up a little bit or something. But there's got to be some translation system, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think to me anyway, like I very much embody that, like, get the lucky entries and then get the likely exits.
Yes.
I think I basically, and to me at least, that's kind of how I think. I look at what is roughly fair value. Like, I buy when it's way too cheap, in my head anyway, and then I sell where I'm like, okay, this is actually now just reasonable. And oftentimes in crypto, it goes from very unreasonably cheap to very unreasonably expensive. And I just buy very cheap and sell just at an okay price. That's just kind of how I approach trading. It's been doing well for me, but obviously can squeeze this market for much more if you want to be a little bit more greedy.
It's not as sexy either, though, right?
Yeah,
like, I mean, obviously that type of style, because if it's roughly around fair value, then it's like Whereas if you're waiting for a massive premium, that's where a lot of euphoria comes in. It's like a bigger move, it's a longer swing, and so on and so forth.
But usually how it goes and how I used to trade these cycles would be that I bought very cheap and then sold fair value and then shorted when it got stupid. And that's kind of how I got most of it. Just by, like, because you need a little bit of time to transition from being bullish to going to bearish, and that would usually do the trick for me. As in, like, I sell when it's like decently priced, and then it goes higher and higher, and you're like, this is just getting ridiculous now. And then when it gets too ridiculous, like, oh, this is just free money if I take the short. And that's usually how I used to trade these things. Did really well, but obviously nowadays I just don't short the down leg anymore. So
I think the way most people do that is revenge trading, Don. You know, they're like, they buy, then they sell, and it goes on without them. It's like, how fucking dare you? You know, go back to where I exited so I can buy. It's more of a spite motivated trade, and then they short that, and then you blow up your short at the top, and then it goes down. That's definitely not speaking from experience on that one.
But that's the worst that you can do when you, like, actually go at it from no worries. When you go and you're like, I need to prove this market.
Yes.
If you go at it with that mindset, you might get lucky, but you're gonna give it back anyway, even if you get lucky, and you're very likely not gonna get lucky.
It's like taking this shit personally, right? I think it's a good way to describe it. Like, how dare you go up without me after all I did for you? I was there with you at the lows, and now you're living your best life after I lifted you up. I'll fucking show you. You know, show up at the house at 2 a.m. type of thing. I think that's what revenge trading is in many cases.
Yeah.
Yes, so we dismissed the ETH monthly. The ETH weekly is unchanged, 2K, 3K, 4K. You can watch the Altcoin Thursday episode from yesterday to get, I guess, a slightly deeper view. But the argument there was essentially the same as for BTC, that like 3K ETH is similar to 60K BTC, where you have a local floor where all the levels on all time frames converge. We've spent a lot of time and price and basically volume at those levels, so it becomes kind of scary to be betting on them for the nth time. So what makes sense is either to just breakout trade the thing once you're clear of the floor, or let the floor break down and buy a cheaper support or a failed breakdown. From a short to medium term trading point of view, you know, it's completely possible that despite 3-4 tests, whatever the number is on the time frame, the floor ends up holding without any failed breakdown, without a breakdown at all. So if you get a really nice entry with a nice proximity to invalidation, from a short to medium term trading point of view, you shouldn't lose sleep at night over that. You know, like you got a really good entry at 3K and ended up being wrong. Like, yeah, maybe eat some shit on the slippage, but it's not as bad as if you're buying, you know, the lower high and you're just holding it through, being like, okay, at least we're at support at 3K, and then you get rugged. You know, that's a lot worse, I think. But I think in general, a good way to think about it is when levels get tested, like the more the level gets tested, the greedier you should be. And we've spent a lot of time here, so I think a decent amount of greed is warranted. Although I don't know if you agree with that articulation.
Greedy in what way? With the entries?
Yeah, you want like better entries the more the levels get tested. Because if it's first test, best test, it's like, hey, Geronimo, you know, give me a fucking piece of this. Like, I'll be a bit aggressive, I'll front run it, I just want a piece of it. Whereas if you're there for the fourth time, you're a bit like, oh god, this better give me something really good here that I can justify holding.
Yeah, I 100% agree. The funniest thing is, like, when you look through all these charts, like Bitcoin's at high time frame support, at weekly support, ETH's at weekly support, 3K. Solana is at its support, which is 135. Everything's at support. It's going to be so, like, everyone's going to be like, what the fuck? How did we not notice that everything's at support? Like, why did we not long it if this goes up, right?
Yeah.
But if it breaks down, everyone's going to be like, dude, everything was so heavy. It was leaning on support. Supports didn't do anything. It's so fucking obvious that this was going to break down. Like, 100%. Like, how could you not have seen this?
It's 6K all over again, you fucking tourist amateurs. Yeah. Also, that does tend to be a quite useful heuristic for when the market is tricky. It's when you can make really compelling arguments for both sides, and not in like a disingenuous Don radical centrist type of way. but like actually be able to make more or less equally compelling arguments for the bearish and bullish side. That tends to be a pretty good sign that the market truly isn't easy. And I think here this will be exactly as you suggested. If it breaks up, of course it broke up. If it breaks down, of course it broke down. And then you'll just feel like a cunt if you go on Twitter, and God forbid you're on the wrong side of the market, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas right now, I don't know about your feed, I'm not seeing any bold calls whatsoever.
No, everyone is silent. Everyone's just kind of like
just waiting.
Let me see. And then they make like one or two, like, basically what you see is a bunch of people tweet like, oh, look, here's the support, we're chilling on the support. And then like they're also tweeting at the same time like, oh, everything's so heavy and what's going on, basically. And then you can retweet one or the other, right? Like either like support held, boing, and then you like, I called it, basically. if that support holds, and if it doesn't hold, they're gonna retweet the everything looks heavy tweet. And they're like, well, I told you it was heavy. So and that way it doesn't even look like they were like looking both ways, because they didn't really make a call in both cases.
Yeah.
Because you can make observations on the bullish side and the bearish side quite realistically, like you just said. And then if you do that and you just retweet the one observation that's gonna play out at the end of the day, you're gonna do just fine. That's the Twitter way, and I see it every single move when you have like a predictable kind of very important level that needs to hold or needs to break one or the other. You're gonna get this exact scenario, and people have been kind of getting really good at playing Twitter to get clout both ways.
Yeah. people have kind of progressed from the squiggles in both directions in general as well. Now a lot of the time what I've seen is the sort of Twitter meta is they'll be like, this is a really big area here. Like, this is a really big level. And then if it breaks, it's like, well, I told you, look, we broke it and we went down so much. It was obviously a really big level. And then if it goes up, it's like, well, of course, the big level held. That's what it's there for, you know?
Yep.
And yeah, I'm not sure how useful that is, but Twitter is another beast. I don't have any altcoin things that have changed since yesterday, believe it or not, Don. With the bleeding vol. I think you pointed out the Solana level, same considerations as yesterday. Talked about BTC, ETH. Anything else on your mind? Have you seen any interesting tweets recently or something make you pause and think?
I mean, the only thing that's really up today is Litecoin. It's up 5% on Litecoin Bitcoin. So it's truly fucking over.
Litecoin. I mean, it's the halving kicking in. It just takes a while.
Yeah, it just took a while. I still like, as dumb as it is. I mean, I do have a little Litecoin position.
Since I still think when?
I bought this like at 90 something.
At the top.
But but a tiny one. And I want to buy more. Like, I was hoping that it was gonna go to 70 because I wanted to buy. Like, it actually almost went to 70. It almost wicked to 70. But like, I wanted it to go like to 68, 69, 70, but it didn't quite make it. And now it's bouncing. I actually really don't dislike the thesis on Litecoin. I dislike the chart and I think it's stupid. But it's so dumb, and Litecoin is so similar to Bitcoin that you can just basically gamble on an ETF in a way where you don't have as many roadblocks as other things. It's actually not the dumbest thing in the world, I think. But still Litecoin. So you're probably still going to lose money if you buy this thing.
So it's what? Is it the sort of ETF boomification thesis that we discussed in the past?
Yeah, I think it's... And I mean, this is gonna look funny to you, right? But open Litecoin USD on the weekly, okay?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm gonna take you for a ride, okay? So
not the first time.
Yeah. So do you have log or do you have non-log?
Whichever one you want.
Okay, so do log.
Okay. Yes.
And then draw from December 2018. Draw a diagonal.
Oh Jesus! I need an older chart. Which exchange are you using?
Binance works.
Just for LTC USD.
LTC USD. Yeah.
Okay. Oh yeah. Am I drawing from the wick of December 2017, the one that went to zero?
No, from December 2018.
December 2018.
And then you just draw it, and you can see that price has just kind of like been chilling on that trend line.
I see. You're drawing like a big boy.
Oh, big one, yeah. Okay. And then you can basically draw in the cycle highs, so December 17, and cross that over.
Oh no, go away.
And there you go. Beautiful.
So this is a 5-year, whatever, trend line, 6-year trend line from 2018 to 2024.
Dude, what's this called? Charlie, whatever the fuck? I forgot his the guy that made Litecoin.
Oh, Charlie Lee. Yeah,
Charlie Lee. I was like, yeah, Charlie Lee's revenge, man.
Oh, this is how he wins, huh?
This is how he wins.
I thought you were going to say parabolic Trav. If you know, you know.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not parabolic enough. Maybe it'll go parabolic. No, but I actually don't dislike it. Just like, it's a fucking stupid line to draw on a chart, but just cyclically, it's been doing okay. And I like the narrative. So I think Litecoin's going to be interesting, as dumb as that sounds.
Your portfolio is like Litecoin, Doge, Pepe.
Yeah, I mean, that's not that bad, is it? Like, I think that's not that bad. Like, Dogecoin, Litecoin usually go hand in hand. Generally, like, if Dogecoin does well, Litecoin does decent.
Sure.
Just based on how the mining is structured.
Yes, I'm sure you know a lot about how the mining is structured. Who are you kidding, man?
Oh, no. I actually know.
Well, just like proof of work type of thing, or do you mean more?
No, dude, you could mine both of them at the same. Like, it's basically how it works. Like, you could combine your mining for Litecoin and Doge. And I mean, the reason why I know this is because back in the day I actually cared, you know.
Yes.
And this is old tech, so I know it.
So Don yesterday is like, fuck this space, fuck crypto, I can't keep up with anything, etc. But man comes in the next day and draws a 6-year trend line on Litecoin and starts talking about like the mining algorithms. Jesus Christ.
I mean, this one I knew from back from 2016, 17, whatever. Doesn't really matter. I think like generally you're gonna lose money on Litecoin, so don't like look at it too heavily. But I find it just I personally on a personal level find this quite interesting. I don't know why it's up today 5%. Probably just
a mistake.
it went down. Yeah, probably a mistake. Someone accidentally bought Litecoin instead of something else.
Pushed the wrong button. Yeah.
Yeah, they were like LTC or is it BTC? I forgot.
Yeah.
Like some rich dude that doesn't know any crypto. But yeah, anyway, there's really not that much on the altcoin front.
Agreed. And whatever there was, we discussed yesterday in better form than we could today. It's kind of the point of that show.
And I think generally, if Bitcoin breaks down, you're not going to have too much fun on the altcoins, and if Bitcoin goes up, you're probably going to print on the more popular ones.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to just look at Bitcoin and then make your bet,
which is pretty much flat for the day now as well.
Yeah. It reversed your 5-minute breakout.
It started on the 1 minute, and then I don't know. It looks like a 1 minute retest to me, bro. It's fine, relax. We'll come back to it after the news portion. Let's do the news portion.
Yeah, let's do it.
So I've got 4 articles here. Open the old school way, so you're not offended. Fidelity's spot Bitcoin ETF records outflow for first time. So that means it's over, right? 23 million moved out of the fund on Thursday, recording a net daily outflow for the first time. Other funds from ARK Invest, Bitwise, and Valkyrie also saw outflows on top of GBTC is just, that's very self-evident. The market doesn't really seem to care. I think most of the focus is when GBTC gets really active. That seems to be price sensitive. And when IBIT, the BlackRock ETF, gets very active in either way. That both of those seem to have more market impact and traders seem to care about, and the rest, their kind of oscillations don't seem particularly price sensitive. So this isn't like huge news. I wouldn't see this as some big inflection points. I think if we get like recurring a sort of build up of negative days, or rather consecutive outflows on the BlackRock product, I think that might have a bit of an impact. People being like, okay, well, this gave us so much and we did so much front running of the BlackRock ETF specifically. Now that ship's turned around, kind of how low can we go type of thing. I think traders would care about that. But these up days, down days, changes in the smaller ETFs, I don't think are worth that much personally.
I agree. Just nothing burgers.
Yeah. Nothing.
But it's going to be interesting when we get because we only had inflows for now, right? Like realistically.
Pretty much, yeah.
When we get like a period of sustained outflows, which we will get eventually, right? It doesn't have to happen this month or next month or this year. But at some point, we're going to get like a bunch of outflows.
Sure.
And it's going to be interesting how the crypto natives and just in general, like also the ETF people react to that when they see that people are leaving the ship, because we have a bunch of new hands now on board, and they trade different to what we're used to, which is going to be interesting to observe.
Yeah, I completely agree. I don't think there's anything else that's particularly interesting ETF wise. The only other observation is in terms of how it plays out. If I had to guess and completely speculate, you know how on the way up, a lot of it was, these ETFs had huge volumes and huge inflows, and that's important and has market impact. But there was also a shit ton of front running of those numbers the whole time.
Oh yeah.
And it was like a front running game, as we discussed on previous shows. I kind of think from a crypto native point of view, they'll try to align themselves in the same way. Like if momentum really picks up and you're getting these large outflows, you'll get doubly fucked. Just like we doubly benefited on the way up from front running plus the actual flows, I think we get doubly fucked on the way down of front running plus actual outflows. But maybe some different dynamic emerges. I'm just guessing.
No, probably true. Like I think the funny thing is the crypto natives are the more skittish ones.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
So if there's gonna be outflows, we're gonna see panic of the people that have been around for so long already and should know better. But the funny thing is, like how it kind of goes is that the smart people, they don't really panic, but they're like, oh, this could lead to panic. And then they sell, and that selling leads to panic, and then it's the funniest thing ever. Like basically, smart people make decisions to avoid something, and that actually leads to that. And it would have never happened if the smart people didn't do whatever the fuck they did.
Oh, I love it though.
Yeah,
Makes for great trading.
It's the best space for trading. It's just how it is.
It's the Keynesian beauty contest, you know. Consensus sues SEC, challenging its approach to Ethereum and seeking court intervention. I mean, just legal season. And crypto's been doing quite well in general / on average, especially with the big blockbuster type of cases. The shitty part is there's still some absolutely terrible legislation being passed, or at least being postured, which isn't great. But from a, even if we're not winning in the sort of political branch, the judiciary, or the legislative branch rather, in the judiciary, crypto has a pretty decent track record. I'm just annoyed at this, as always, from a governance perspective. This isn't how laws should be made. That's for the legislative branch, and then the judiciary, or these enforcement agencies. It's their job to enforce the legislation as it's written, but they're essentially trying to write legislation via these lawsuits, and that's just inappropriate from a separation of powers plus process point of view, at least in my amateur point of view. And that's just annoying. It would just be nice to get a change at the SEC and stop them from being so fucking litigious. And then in order to make that work, you need more guidance from Congress, the Senate, etc. if we're going to stay US focused, and just kind of make it operate as it should, that delicate dance between the legislature and enforcement agencies and actual businesses and so on and so forth. It's just these fucking lawsuits from the SEC, and they can't win a single fucking one, not in any material sense anyway. It just makes everyone look bad, and it just sucks that crypto has become this political football that you punt around for, I guess, low-hanging fruit votes, or the perception of the existence of low-hanging fruit votes, and businesses that just try to run and work in good faith get fucked as a result. You're going after like Coinbase and Kraken and MetaMask, etc., whereas people are just straight up stealing millions via meme coins, scams, rugs, hacks, etc., dodgy protocols, all of that. But very slow to act on those. Usually way after the fact, after everyone's lost their money. That's when the SEC comes in to quote unquote clean up once everyone's dead. But being proactive in going against good faith crypto businesses, oh yeah, baby, any day of the week. Got all the time in the world for that.
Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous, but so I think it's going to end quite soon because they're losing too much. Like, it's starting to get embarrassing. And I think that's going to, like, in the next 1-2 years, I think that's going to change. Hopefully, fingers crossed. But I think Gensler is a thing of the past.
Yeah.
He's not going to be around for much longer.
To be clear, that is not a threat. It is...
No.
You're saying his term will run out and he'll be changed, or he will.
I will not be doing the changing myself.
I'm just gonna crop that out of context. Don't worry, Gensler won't be around for much longer. I'm like, holy shit! Why does some German dude who doesn't even short care so much about the SEC? But here we go. Agreed, and it's just annoying because these lawsuits take fucking ages to unfold. We'll probably have more with like the ETH ETF lawsuits that are being threatened if they keep delaying or deny. I mean, Jesus Christ, there's such an inappropriate way to make policy,
Yeah.
But here we are.
Talking about embarrassing, right? Do you want to go on the 1 minute chart real quick?
Oh god. No, it's not loading. I can't. I think it's showing some old data. There's a trading view pricing bug.
Fair enough. Oh. Beautiful chop price action.
Yeah.
This is what we say. Like, you say chop when it's actually going down to prevent you having to say that it's going down.
It's so choppy.
Oh, it's so terribly choppy. It chopped all the way from 70 to 16K last time.
Yeah, the Titanic didn't sink. It chopped.
Yes.
It's still chopping at the bottom of the ocean. Yeah, I mean, this is a nice retest on BTC. Retest of what? Sorry, we already covered that. Don't ask me.
Yes. Sorry, the show's running out of time.
It really is. The meme coin casino undermines crypto's long-term prospects. And this is the kicker, who it comes from, Don. A16Z or Z, whatever.
Great. I mean, you couldn't write better script, no?
So what do you think is wrong with this specific articulation? Even if you agree with the conclusion, the fact that A16Z is saying it.
Oh, I mean, if you do scummy shit, right, and you kind of like take everyone for a ride, in a way, like you basically, You take the whole ecosystem and you take advantage of it by getting in early in deals that no one else can, and then you write this because you cannot get early allocations in meme coins. Just seems a little bit, I don't know, disingenuous. There's just a little bit like, I don't know, maybe be a better person or like group or whatever yourself then, right? Like there's too much, like when you have too much shit, like, or when you've done too much shit, or just generally questionable things, I don't know if you can really call the meme coins out.
I just don't think you're allowed to be on the frontier for years and years of years and years, theoretically, not referring to any specific group or fund. But if this were me, and I'm on the frontier of fundraising and deploying huge rounds based on my connections and my capital and my status and my name brand recognition and anything else, and I'm just yeeting money into these worthless protocols with worthless governance tokens that I know are worthless and don't do a single fucking thing, and then just dumping them on retail's heads over and over and over again, and then raise a bigger fund, rinse and repeat, and then to come and lecture from the perceived moral high ground, even though I have no right to be there, about how this is hurting crypto's credibility. It's really strains the imagination. Because that's how a lot of venture in crypto operates, right? Again, no specific funds, but just in general. They had their time in the sun since a little bit post-ICO era, I think, is probably a fair classification, of just showing up, use your capital, use your connections, whatever. You know the tokens are worthless. You know all of this shit goes down in a bear market anyway and doesn't save you. And then you just get these worthless governance tokens and use them to vote for stuff that benefits you, and then just fucking dump them on people's heads and rinse and repeat. So, I mean,
allegedly
in Minecraft, if there were any such funds in crypto. And having done that, you'll forgive me for not listening too closely to your complaints about meme coins. Now, yes, I think also meme coins is worth noting. Maybe we didn't spend enough time about this last time. Like, I think the status of these meme coin launches has also changed. I think a lot of them in the slightly earlier days were fair launch-ish, or at least if one is inside a mega scam and 5 is, the virgin birth of altcoins, they were maybe closer to 5 than they were to 1. But now I think, now that it's become such a dominant meta, there's a lot more sophisticated scamming essentially going on with these launches. So I can understand it. But just in general, if you're very much on the venture front or supported the old model, your arguments kind of ring hollow, I think, if now you're worried about the reputation or whatever else. I'm not sure that funding the 50th dogshit protocol that just users farm and fuck off from and doesn't do anything, and making money off of that is materially different from the thing you're criticizing. At least the thing you're criticizing doesn't pretend to be otherwise for the most part, and you benefited from a not too different version of the system that you're complaining about at the moment. And look, if
you're not in it, right? Like that's the thing.
You're just upset. And also, just very quickly, if it were the case that these so-called quality projects performed materially differently in a bear market on account of their so-called amazingly different, well-funded treasury team fundamentals, etc., then I could understand, right? Because then we'd be able to make an argument that, yeah, well, look, meme coins, they'll just die and go to 0 and go down 99% and whatever, but at least these quality coins, they behave differently in a bear market, and, they can be used as a hedge, and you can risk off into them, and they perform better. It's like, but it's just not fucking true. Like, you come into crypto, there's an uptrend, you try to basically do a bank robbery, hit and run, make as much money as you can, because no matter what the so-called quality of your project is, from super well-funded technical layer 1 to complete fucking meme coin scam dog shit, you're not going to be able to tell the difference in your portfolio if you're still holding it all the way through the downtrend, because the market is just so fucking correlated. You'll eat shit just, I guess, with the different size spoons and at different intervals, but it's not going to rescue you, So you can't even make that type of argument.
And to be fair, the meme coin meta, I think, needs to be criticized. Like, I'm not saying it shouldn't.
Oh, sure.
I'm just saying, like, for some reason, it's coming from the wrong people all the time.
Yeah.
And I don't know. But then again, like at the end of the day, right? And I think this is just how it is now. Like, no one can throw stones anymore in this space. Like almost no one can because everyone's just been part of some form or another of taking advantage of their position or whatever. So it's kind of like it does need to be criticized, but the sad part is the only people that are left to criticize are the people that took advantage of other scummy systems before. And I don't know, it's just, this space is just something else.
It's just kind of reactionaries fighting each other, right? So the meme coin people, that's kind of a reaction to how insidery the VC stuff was, at least to some extent. And now the VCs are reacting to their lunch getting taken away and making reputational arguments because their deal flow has been negatively impacted by people going into memes, and also kind of the democratization of private/seed rounds. And then you've got the radical centrist Don of Technical Roundup, who criticizes both sides and then shoves a woo ref link down your throat, so you know, take your poison.
Yep, exactly. No, I think you can really realistically criticize anything or anyone in the space at this point.
It's true.
Yeah. I'm not here to morally grandstand. I'm just saying, like, it does seem a little bit funny. And I mean, it's not like I haven't criticized the meme coin stuff that's been going on, but I do know that that's kind of just like part of the market.
Yes.
And it's just how it goes. Right?
But also the bad part is, if this stones from glass houses argument is true, then isn't it sort of game theory optimal to kind of scam as hard as you can so you can fuck off quicker?
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem, right? Because technically no one really, like, everyone's like, oh, everyone's being scummy, but there's really shades of gray there, right? Some people are literally out there scamming their followers, and then there's other people investing in shady projects, and then there's people that are investing in projects that they think are decent but don't turn out to be decent, right? Like, there's a lot of shades of gray in that. But yeah, I think just generally speaking, this space is so dirty at this point that I don't think necessarily anyone can wash themselves from guilt. It's just how it is.
How religious. But no, like, if there's no space for nuances, then, you know, like, the whole premise of stones from glass houses is that, you know, you can't criticize people if you can be accused of the same thing. But I don't think it's the same thing. I think if you can be accused of a similar thing, then it's pretty much just as bad. Like, no one's going to be there and be like, oh, but did you snipe the launch, or did you get in on the seed stage, and did you know this? They're like, okay, well, you talked about stuff that went down, fuck you. It's like a very broad brush that you get painted with. So I think the argument becomes, well, if I'm going to get shit no matter what happens, and even if I try to work in the morally grey area where I actually think these projects are good, but then there's a couple of scammers on the cap table, like, fuck this, I don't have time for this. I've already accepted that any participation in the system is going to lead to eventual moral outrage, pocket watching, tagging, inverse brand, Zach XBT, then fuck it, I might as well do it properly and make as much money as I can, because those kind of shades of grey don't make it to the criticism stage. We're all going to get painted with the same brush. So fuck it, if I'm going to scam, let me scam properly, as opposed to trying to be good guy scammer, you know?
Yeah, but I think at the end of the day, everyone has to be able to watch, like, be happy with who they are and what they represent. And I think that's just, like, yeah, everyone has to figure out how far that goes for themselves.
I've also seen some people whom I considered, like, very close friends early in crypto just straight up spiral into this, where even in the ICO era, they were like, oh man, this is like so insidery and so scammy, which is hilarious because now ICOs seem like the beacon of fairness. You know, if you weren't on Ian Bellina's spreadsheet, your project should be going to zero. And they sort of did one or two seed round IDO type of thing, and they just get fucking hooked. It's like a gateway drug to scamming, you know? Like, one day you do a cheeky angel round for your friend, and the next day you're shilling 10 meme coins and sitting in fucking Twitter spaces.
I mean, I think once they realize how easy and how much money it is, like, a lot of people just kind of fall for it, which is quite sad to see, honestly, like, especially in people that you respect.
Sure, but also BTC's at fucking 60k and ETH's at 4k. Like, how badly do you need this shit, guys? Like,
yeah,
like,
I mean,
really?
Very badly. Yeah, I think a lot of people just didn't have any Bitcoin, had a bunch of shit coins, and that just kind of basically trying to make the Bitcoin back that they used to have.
It's such a tell on yourself, though, isn't it? It's like self-snitching. Like, if all this shit more or less hits all-time highs and Solana goes to like 100, whatever it went to, 200 plus from $8, and then you start scamming really aggressively, it's like, I don't know, man. It doesn't make the last year or so of trading look particularly good for you. Maybe that's reading too much into it, but it's at least
no. I mean, for sure. Like, if you made enough money, you don't need to kind of scam other people out of theirs. Like, it's just not how it is.
I'm just an angel, bro. No one's scamming anyone else. I can't wait when I start scamming for all these clips to just come back and fucking haunt me in my sleep. It's gonna be great. And I'll have a very hard time arguing against myself, I think, but...
It's the only one you're going to lose an argument to.
Yeah. It's the only person I really listen to. Great. So Memecoin Casino, A16Z, thanks for your thoughts. None of the comments were made towards you. They were general comments about crypto venture. We don't even know anything about crypto venture. We are primitive candlestick make boing commentators. So
it's true.
I checked in on the 1 minute, by the way, Don, and it's green. So anyway, back to
very green.
Very green.
Very green in China.
I mean, this current 1 minute candle is green.
Okay.
Anyway, I'm clicking off before it turns. Ether spot ETF approval seen as increasingly doubtful by industry professionals. Sort of spoke about that. Does that change anything insofar as ETH BTC? I'm just at this point hoping something rips the band-aid off this thing. I know we sort of avoided talking about ETH BTC from a TA point of view, but just in general, I've never seen a coin that occupies so much mindshare for how fucking boring it is and how little it's done as a kind of pair trade. It's like the only pair trade that people care about in crypto full stop ever because of historical sort of cyclical reasons of ETH outperforms BTC in a bull market. That's been kind of useful. Also, back in the day, you could actually use ETH BTC as a kind of altcoin risk on, risk off type of tool, which used to work really well. So it kind of deserves its status and the attention that it receives. But by God, the amount of attention that this thing gets from a purely price/TA point of view, given how it's been trading, is absolutely miserable. And I also think, and this is a less popular opinion, it's probably the most entitled trade in crypto, where people just think like at some point it's your birthright, God-given birthright to make money on ETH BTC. So there's no such thing as being wrong, only being too early. And that's also been an interesting dynamic to observe, given it's been fucking bleeding for a year.
Yeah, I mean, it could just be, and I'm not necessarily in that camp, but I think there is a chance that ETH BTC just turns into like what Litecoin Bitcoin has been, as in just keeps on going down forever. And I don't think that's necessarily completely out there. Like, I don't think that's a low probability. It's not the highest probability. I think the chances of ETH BTC outperforming again are quite high. But it's kind of funny that that's not even... I've never even seen a tweet that would say anything of the sort, even though ETH BTC has been bleeding for multiple years now, right? So, yeah, I do kind of agree. People are feeling very entitled, but I think for decent reasons, because ETH's just decent. But I think...
High praise.
Yeah, but I think it would do better price-wise if it actually just dumped first.
Just rip the fucking band-aid off. I know that sounds like bear-tarded European or whatever, but I think anything is better than this type of slow breakdown chop. Like, forget the whole ETH, BTC kind of historical stuff, just even from a purely zero-brain TA perspective. No one likes to trade bleeds, you know?
No.
Even if you're on the right side of the bleed, your asshole is always clenched, because when bleeds reverse, it happens in a very volatile fashion. And then if you're waiting to buy this thing, then... you don't fucking buy the bleed because it'll probably just keep bleeding. So there's no good trade to be had there, at least from a technical perspective, unless you're doing some sort of multi-cycle, this is discounted type of thesis. It's like this bleedy, downtrendy price action just tends to suck, I think, in general.
Yeah, and I think generally, and this, I mean, I think this is actually quite accurate, but I wonder what people think. I think most of CT has actually been focused on ETH the entire way up, and has been suffering because of it. I think it was the consensus trade the entire way up, and it was completely and utterly wrong the entire way down, basically. Like, it's just, it was truly the midwit trade. And I think if we did one thing really right, I think that was basically it. That we called it the midwit trade so early on, and told people to focus on something else. And so far, so right. We'll see if that continues.
We're just going to cash that in until the end of time. It's like, you two have been wrong about BTC for like 8 months in a row. It's like, yes, but remember back in 2024, we talked about BTC being the midbit trade. It's like, but you didn't even long Solana. It's like, shut up.
But, I mean, we were like, if you want to buy something, buy Solana, to be fair.
Yeah,
we
that
said,
counts
don't
as
buy
longing,
ETH.
right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's all about the cloud. It's not about making money.
I'm E-long.
But, yeah. I think that's gonna turn, but it needs sentiment to shift for some weird fucking reason. Like, it doesn't really make much sense, right? That you would think that people need to actually fucking hate ETH for it to go up, but I think that's how it is.
Sentiment on this thing is fucking bulletproof.
Yeah. For some reason, like, people are still trying to trying to pick the bottom, or at least they're like, oh, I'm just going to hold it because it's going to turn around eventually, which is scary as fuck when you think about it. And the scariest part is that I kind of agree, right? That I'm like, oh, yeah, I mean, it's probably going to turn around at some point if you hold it long enough. What if it doesn't? I mean, that would be the end of a lot of crypto careers, I think, which is wild to think about, given it's technically an altcoin. But I do think it will. I'm just saying, like, people are too sure of it, which is a little bit scary.
And clearly timing it is one of the hardest fucking things. One of the hardest trades, full stop. You know? Like, even if you're right, which isn't a given, insofar as this shit's going to turn around. And look, when I say turn around, no one means, like, get back into the range. They usually mean it's going to make, like, new highs on ETH BTC itself, right? Or at least go back to the old highs. So even if you're right about that, which is a pretty tricky thing to do, that's a bet in itself, then you have to time this thing. Which adds an extra layer of complexity, and especially given this thing's been like a downtrend, that's really tough to do. And I think it's been one of the hardest trades in general, because we've gone through like a number of potential reasons. Like, okay, we're in a bull market now that BTC is kind of back above 20k, and we've got the BlackRock ETF. We're front running it. People will rotate to ETH. Because in a bull market, ETH outperforms. Like, that wasn't right. Then it was like, okay, as we're approaching the ETF, people are going to jump into ETH as a kind of risk-on signal now that we've got the BTC ETF as well. That was incorrect. And then it was, okay, on the actual ETF date or very close to it, that'll be essentially priced in on the BTC front, but because we're still in the bull market, then you rotate to ETH. That was fucking wrong. And then it's like, well, ETH is going to get its own ETF now the BTC ETF has been approved and, you know, some time has passed, and that doesn't seem very fucking likely. It's just been bait after bait after bait to get you to rotate. And it's been an absolute nightmare trying to time this thing, let alone the price action.
Yeah. And when you zoom out a little bit, just looking at it, and I mean, this is bottom talk things, but if you look at it, 2017, we had a high. Then we had 2018, beginning of 2018, we have a lower high. And we actually never managed to break any of those. That range that we used to have was another lower high, technically. Like, it did have nice price action going into that high, but it has been cursed for a little while.
Multi-year technical view on the Technical Roundup. Should we do a quick 1 minute check before we wrap up, Don?
Yes.
Okay, I need your analysis because clearly my 1 minute chart skills are... Yeah, so this is actually one of the most popular buildings in Dubai.
Exactly.
What do you think of the 1 minute? There are some candlesticks.
There's a few, yeah. I can actually see like at least 10.
Most TA sounds like what you just how you just communicated that.
Yeah. I mean, it's full retrace, not great, but also it's a 1 minute chart.
So it's a double bottom. Have you heard of that pattern?
Okay, let's see who's right. Whether I'm right and it's fucked, or whether you're right and it's a double bottom.
I literally spoke it into existence at the Pico bottom, and I've moved stops break even now. So after fees, I'll only lose like $5,000
now. Okay, I mean, if there's the bottom, Cred called it. If it isn't, Don called it.
But look, there's a green 1 minute candle now. Who cares about the next week until this show? We're talking, on the 1 minute time frame, it's only 1 minute metrics that matter.
Fair enough. It almost reclaimed the last minute of price action.
There's the 1 minute. I mean, dude, I don't know. This seems like some price delivery algorithms are rebalancing. Maybe there's some news. Maybe there's some flows. Maybe BlackRock knows something. But this is full sending now.
Oh, it's full sending.
You fully embarrassed yourself. I'm going to stop the recording before it fucking full retraces.
Perfect. Let's call it a day.
Let's call it a day. Thank you for watching this episode of Casual Friday. Before you click off, we'd appreciate it if you clicked a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. We're trying to catch up to BTC. It's better if we do it than if the market does it. As always, the show is brought to you by Woo. Links available in the description below. Some fun product features and iterations coming your way. Hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.